So in this video, we are going to talk about the top 10 men who are really women. So, number 10, Brandon Tina. Tina Brandon was born in 1972 in London, in Lincoln, Nebraska. As a child, she was regarded as a tomboy, and everyone called her Brandon. After being sexually abused by a male relative, she moved to Richardson County, Nebraska, and began to live entirely as a male. She became friends with two ex-convicts, John Letter and Marvin Tomlinson. She also began dating a woman, Lana Tisdale. None of her friends knew she was female. Branson was jailed for forging checks, and his girlfriend Lana bailed him out. Because Branson was in the women's section of the prison, Lana discovered his true sex. According to Lana, she stopped dating Brandon at this time. When Brandon's arrest was published in the paper under her proper name, Lauder and Nissan discovered the truth. They raped Brandon and beat her. Brandon went to the police, but a large number of administrative errors resulted in her case not being investigated. Eventually, Lauder and Nissan would go on to shoot Brandon and two others who were hiding her. Latter was sentenced to death and Nissan to life imprisonment. The story of Brandon Tina became the subject of the Academy Award-winning film Boys Don't Cry. So, number 9, James Gray. James Gray was born Hannah Snell in 1723 in England. As a child, she played soldiers, but was otherwise seen as a normal young girl. In 1744, she married James Sums, and 2 years later gave birth to a daughter. Within a year, her daughter had died and her husband had deserted her. She borrowed a man's suit from her brother-in-law, James Gray, whose name she assumed. She began to travel, trying to find her husband, whom she later discovered had been executed for murder. She traveled to Portsmouth and joined the Royal Marines. She was sent into battle twice, during which time she was wounded 11 times in the legs and once in the groin. It is not known how she conceived sex when her groin wound was treated. In 1750, her unit returned to England and she revealed her true sex to her shipmates. She told her story to the papers and petitioned for a military pension, which was surprisingly granted. Her military service was officially recognized, and she eventually opened a pub called the Female Warrior. She eventually remarried and had two children. Hannah had died in 1792. Next one is Peter Hagberg. Brittany's daughter was born in 1756 in Sweden. In 1785, she married Anderson Peter Hagberg, who was a soldier of the god. Shortly after the marriage, she was called away to participate in the Russo-Swedish War. At a loss without her husband, Britta dressed herself as a man and enlisted in the army to find him. Next, number 7, Albert Cashier. Albert Cashier was born Jenny Irene Hodgers in 1843. In 1862, Hodgers disguised herself as a man and enlisted in the 95th Illinois Infantry Regiment under the name Albert Cashier. The regiment was under Ulysses S. Grant and fought in over 40 battles. Cashier managed to remain undetected as the other soldiers thought she was just small and preferred to be alone. Next, number 6, Marinus. Marinus was born Marina in the 6th century. Her father wanted to join a monastery, so he took his daughter, disguised as a boy, with him. Both were admitted and became monks. After living in the monastery for a number of years, it became necessary for both father and daughter to travel. Next thing is number 5, Dennis Smith. Dennis Smith was an English reporter who disguised herself as a man to go undercover during World War One. Next, number 4, Melinda Blaylock. Melinda Blaylock was a female soldier during the American Civil War who fought bravely on both sides. When the war started, rather than be separated from her husband Keith, she decided to disguise herself as a man and join the army too. Next, number 3, James Barry. James Barry, born in 1792, was military surgeon in the British Army, and by the end of his career was Inspector General in charge of military hospitals. He served in South Africa and India. Among his accomplishments was the first successful caesarean section in Africa by a British surgeon, in which both the mother and child survived the operation. James Barry was born Margaret Ann Bulkley and is therefore the first female Briton to become a qualified medical doctor. It is believed that Bulkley took on the role of a man in order to achieve her dreams of working in medicine. Next, number 2, Chevalier Dion. Charles Genevieve Louis Augustine Andrew Beaumont was born in 1728 in France. Dion was born a female but lived the first half of her life as a man. Dion's autobiography states that she was raised as a boy because her father could only inherit money from his in-laws if he had a son, as was usual for the day. Because her family were nobles without a title, they styled themselves as Chevalier, meaning knight. In 1756, Dion joined the spice service of King Louis XV and travelled on a secret mission to Russia to meet the Empress Elizabeth. Last one, number 1, Billy Tipton. Billy Tipton was a jazz pianist and the saxophonist. In 1933, she began her career as a musician in various small Oklahoma bars. As time passed, Tipton began to associate with her father's name, Billy, and eventually she began to present as male by breast binding and packing. At first, Tipton appeared male only in performances, but by 1940 she was living entirely as a male. She ultimately gained great success as a musician and went on to record a series of various very popular albums. So these are the top 10 people. Actually they are men, top 10 men who were really women. So they acted as men, but actually they are women.